Hey, First Assembly, this is Pastor Wes, and I want to welcome you to Wednesday Word. Listen, it's so good to be with you this evening, and I want to thank you for joining with us in these holiday season. Things are busy, and so thank you for taking the time and spending a few minutes with us as we get into God's Word. And we've been talking a lot about change, dealing with change. Change is always a relevant topic because change is always real, and it's powerful. I think more powerful when you're going through it. My family and I recently purchased a home just a couple months, and in the process of moving, you pack everything you own into boxes, and it's always amazing, to me, how much stuff you have. You kind of get used to living in a place, but when you have to take it out and put it into boxes, you always have more stuff than you think you have. And so everything we own went into boxes, and we moved. And it's amazing because there were things that we pretty much forgot that we had, that we rediscovered when we were having to pack it to move. And so when you bring it from an old place where it had a place it was to a new house that doesn't have a place yet, it doesn't have a spot yet, it kind of gives you the opportunity to kind of step back and say, do I really need this? And we just found ourselves saying that a lot. Pulling things out of the closet, saying, when's the last time I wore this? Do I really need this? When's the last time we used that? Do we really need that? And we said that a lot. And there are certain things that quite honestly, to get out of the old house we packed, that I'm not unpacking in the new house. We're just going to donate certain things because we don't really need it. And so things are gained and lost in transition. I had someone tell me that one time, and I understood it then, and there have just been multiple times throughout my life that phrase just hits home again, and I understand it at a deeper level and a new level. Things are gained and lost in transition. And this is a powerful thing. To really kind of sit and chew on it a little bit, because there are seasons in your life that what you had isn't what is best to serve you in the season that you're currently in. Something new is needed. And one of the struggles I think in lives is when we are trying to take something old and adapt it to the new season that we're in. And some things don't fit. There are things that I think in transition we need to let go of, and things that we need to take on in that. And it's challenging, but it's also a great opportunity to ask yourselves right questions. Looking at your life right now, are there things that I don't need? And what do I need? You may find there's old friendships that no longer really bless your life and benefit your life, that God has something different for you. A job, a home. There's just different opportunities to really ask yourself this. So because you're in transition, that's the best time to make a change, because things are gained and lost there. And my wife has said this, moving into the house. She said, I want to be careful where we put things, because once you put something in place, that kind of becomes its home. And I kind of laughed at it and poked at it a little bit, but I get what she's saying. Once you put something somewhere, it kind of has a spot. Whether I open it or use it or ever engage in it, that becomes where I look for it and I want to find it. And we can end up in our lives, if we apply that to our lives, we can end up in our lives carrying things forward in our lives that don't benefit us, don't bless us, that are simply there because we've allowed them to have a spot. We've just allowed it to have a place. You move boxes that sat where you put them when you moved into the old place. It sat there until you moved again. You didn't use it. You didn't engage in it. You didn't need it. And so why do we continue to move things forward that we don't really need? And so, again, things are gained and lost in transition. And so there are some things that need to get lost. There are some things that need to be let go of and left behind, and there are things that get lost. In the old house, I knew where to find stuff. In the new house, we haven't figured all that out yet. Boxes of dishes end up in the garage, and tools end up in the bedrooms, and you just kind of open a box and go, well, this doesn't go here, this goes there. And it takes time to get things places that they need to be. And usually you find what you couldn't find before when you're looking for something else. You're trying to find a pair of pliers and open a box and you go, oh, here's my shoes. That can happen too. So there are some things that now is the time. Again, things are gained and lost in transition. And I just can't help but feel that now is the time for us to obtain some things. And now is the time for us to let some things go. And so look at your life when you find yourselves between things. Look at your life when you find yourself in transition. Am I bringing things into the future just because I've always had them? And do they bless my life? Do they benefit my life? Are they there just because I gave it a place? Because in transition is the time to say it served its season, but now I need something new. Don't let things just take a spot. And don't be superficial. Ask deeper questions. Ask more real questions. Because this is the moment that you gain some things, and this is the moment to let some stuff go. And so be bold in this. And bold is a unique thing. We know we're called to be bold. I don't know if we always know what to do with boldness. What does it look like? Boldness is not just volume. Boldness is not just somebody who's demanding. I think boldness is grounded differently. And there's this great story in Genesis 16 of Hagar. She served in the house of Abraham and Sarah. And Sarah at the time couldn't have any children, and she just had this idea and said, let's take our servant Hagar, and Abraham, you can sleep with her and she can have a child, and that's how our home will be blessed and provide. And I want to be clear that while this was culturally acceptable in that day, it doesn't necessarily make it a right thing. And we could say that, of a lot of things today. There are a lot of things in life today that are culturally acceptable but aren't right and lead to pain and lead to struggle and all sorts of things. And what makes this unique is this, that God had given them a promise and they were being impatient. And Sarah wanted to make it happen. She wanted to get it to happen. And she didn't trust that God's promise was going to involve her. God promised Abraham he was going to be this. I don't know what I have in this. And so she's trying to help God out. And from this, Hagar sleeps with Abraham. Hagar gets pregnant. And even though this is Sarah's plan, and it went according to her plan, she ends up becoming jealous and angry, and she ends up treating Hagar so badly that Hagar ends up running away into the wilderness. And there God meets her. The angel of the Lord comes and tells her, I want you to go back to Abraham and Sarah, and I want you to submit. And this is a tough pill to swallow. This one's kind of hard a little bit, because why would God ask me to go back to what was painful and what was a struggle? And the thing is this, because sometimes we find ourselves in bad situations that we want out, that God isn't done with us yet, and we need to stay. I want to run, I want to leave, I want to quit, I want to go. I'm saying this isn't fun. I'm saying this is painful and it's a struggle to my life. And God says, yes, I know, but I'm not finished with you there yet. And He calls us to go back, and He calls us to be faithful. I need you to show up, and I need you to be obedient in this, because I'm not done yet. And an angel tells her a couple of things. One, he says, I want you to name your child Ishmael, which means God hears. Two, he says this, he's going to be a wild donkey of a man. And Ishmael was that. He was a wild donkey of a man. You read his life, you read his story, it's fascinating. But it also has some meanings that are connected to his name that are pretty interesting. In Genesis 16:12, it says this, the son of yours will be a wild man, is untamed as a wild donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all of his relatives. And so we hear that and think he's going to be crazy. But to Hagar, it meant something different. To Hagar, hearing your son's going to be a wild donkey of a man meant to her that he's going to live free and untamed. And for her, that meant something, because he was going to have freedom that she never had. She was a slave serving in somebody else's house, and he was not going to have to do that. Now, his life wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be trying. It was going to be challenging. He was going to raise his fist to everybody. But to Hagar, freedom was something special, even though she didn't fully understand it. But her son was going to be wild and free. He wasn't going to have to live by somebody else's rules. He was going to be free to do things differently. Now, as a parent, I got 4 kids. As a parent, you always want your children to be better off than you were. You want your kids to be more blessed than you were. You want them to have what you didn't have. And for her, this was a part of that. For her, he's free. I've never had that freedom. I've served in somebody else's house, but he's got the freedom. And so in the wilderness, when she's feeling hopeless and completely alone, God meets her there. He gives her a promise for her son and for her life. And, one of the things that I love about this story, and there's several things I just think are fantastic, is she really reveals the name of God that I have really grown to like. And it says this in verse 13, Genesis 16 says, "Thereafter Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoken to her. She said, 'You are the God who sees me.' And she also said, 'Have I truly seen the one who sees me?'" And I love this because we kind of live our lives believing and knowing, hey, God sees, God knows, God sees, God knows, and that's powerful, and that's great. But I can see him. She said, "I've seen the God that sees me." So he can see me, but I can also see God. I can also see God at work. I can see him. I can see his hand. I can see his work in my life. And there's a lot of peace and confidence that comes from that. Because after all the years of feeling invisible, after all the years of just being help in the home, after all the years of being overlooked and hurt, she realized that God saw her, that he wasn't distant, he was with her, that he knew her, and so she listened and obeyed. And she obeyed even though it meant going back to a place of hurt. And that's bold. That's bold. Boldness isn't comfortable. I don't want us to ever think boldness equals being comfortable. It doesn't. Boldness isn't comfortable. Boldness doesn't always take place in joyful situations. Boldness sometimes takes place in the low areas of our lives. It is walking away from what is easier and safer to be closer to God through obedience. Boldness may look different for each of us, but I can promise you this, you really can't be truly bold until you realize that the God who sees you, you can see. There's a confidence that comes with that grants us strength to be bold, that you're not alone, that God isn't finished with your life and your situation yet. Your feelings are real, your emotions are real. I'm not denying that. I just know I'm to walk in obedience and to be bold because we're not alone. My favorite jam on the radio right now is a song by Maverick City, and it's just "Fear Is Not My Future." And I love the wording of it. I love the flow of it, and it just is going through, and all of a sudden it kind of hits this chorus, and it just says, "Fear is not my future, you are. Sickness is not my story, you are. Heartbreak is not my home, you are. Death is not the end, you are." And then it just continues to go over this. And I just think as long as I'm willing to be obedient to God and bold, that's my song. That's my promise. That fear isn't my future. God is my future. Sickness isn't my future. God is my future. And so open up your eyes. I love it. He's doing a new thing. Forgetting what's behind. He's doing a new thing. And let the light in. You see, the strength for the doing of God is found in the letting him in. That when I really say, God, I want to be obedient more than I want to be comfortable. God, I want to be obedient more than I want to have an easy road. God, I want to be obedient and faithful to the things that you call me to be faithful to. It is in that I find strength for the doing of what God calls me to. Now, the flesh and the spirit all want different things. They're always in fighting. They're always in conflict. They'll always be at war with each other. Philippians 3:3 says, we put no confidence in the flesh because, like I said, my feelings, my emotions, they're real. And they're given to us by God, but I can't always trust them because our feelings lie to us. And that's why in Galatians 5:6 it says, walk by the Spirit. Now, the Greek word for walk is peripatio, and it means present tense verb, and it means to do it and to keep doing it. So in essence, it's not a one-time decision. I give my life to walk by the Spirit, and then I walk however I want. But it is a practice of habit and of choice every day in our life. God, today, lead me. God, today, will you guide me throughout my day in conversations and the things that I put my hand to? As Steph and I are kind of getting settled into the house and we're learning the home and all of its sounds, and every home has sounds. And, we were dealing with some electrical issues, and had an electrician coming in and checking sockets and various things like that. And it's all going to be resolved pretty soon. And it got worked out, thankfully. But I remember living in a house where we had a couple of sockets that didn't work and we couldn't figure it out. They wired right, everything was good. And one day we discovered that the sockets were hooked to a switch on the wall. And if you flip the switch on the wall, then all of a sudden there was power to it. And I got to be honest with you, I felt kind of foolish. I felt kind of stupid. I thought, man, I should have figured that out. But I didn't. But here's this thing. There was power available the whole time. I just needed to turn the switch on. I just didn't know how to access it right. And so there is a power that is available to you and I as followers of Christ as we walk in the Spirit. And that's our access. Giving our hearts to God, opening up our lives to God to hear Him and to be obedient is powerful. And I can promise you that whatever you're wanting to become or whatever you want to stop doing is going to take more than just our willpower and our physical determination, that we need the power of God at work in us. We need God's power to love people that are hard to love, to serve when we would rather be served, to give when it would be safer to take and hoard, to invest in the harder thing when we would rather do the easier thing. We need the Spirit at work inside of us. And so everything in my flesh, wants to go towards easy, wants to give into anxiousness, wants to give into worry, to gossip, to reach out to the person that you shouldn't spend time with because of the things you're tempted to do. And so in those moments, how do I rely on God's power? How do I walk in the Spirit in those moments? And what we have to do is to renew our minds. Romans 12:1, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. I love it. Transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will know. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. I have to understand that the foundation of what I am, and I'm called to live a life that is holy and pleasing to God. And so the key to that, God's good, pleasing, perfect will, is my mind being transformed, learning to think differently, that there are situations in my life and circumstances that I'm engaged in that I get trapped in because I'm unwilling to think differently about them. And that's why we keep running up into the same wall. We keep trying to handle things the same way. And if it didn't work the first 10 times, it's probably not going to work the next 10 times. And I have to think differently about it to find a different way. And when I change the way I think, I change the way I act. And that changes the way that I respond to circumstances and temptations. It affects how I treat people. When I'm thinking differently, it frees me to handle things differently. And we all, you and I, all have the power to change. And that goes down to the roots of things, because we do what we do because of what we think of ourselves. How I put Wes Johnson and see Wes Johnson. That when I can change that, I can change what I do and what I become. So how you think impacts everything. And so this is why we have to have a renewed mind. This is why we need truth to be embedded in our thinking. And we do that with God's words. We do that by getting that into our spirit. Prayer, being in relationship with God, because relationship changes you. The Word tells us that the only way to be transformed is to renew our minds. And so reading God's Word is a big deal, getting His thought and Word in us. Psalms 119:11 says, I've hidden your Word in my heart that I might not sin against you. I think when we're dealing with things, that there's something to getting into the Word and finding scriptures that speak to that. Find scriptures that speak to what you feel God's asking you to do and what you're wanting to become. A scripture that addresses casting off a sin you want to be rid of, or a habit you want to start, or a goal that you want to accomplish. Be intentional and build the right things. I think this makes a difference in our lives. Another thing you can do to help walk in the Spirit and be in the Spirit is listen to good Bible teaching. I was listening to some stuff coming in this morning, and just feed your mind and your heart the right thing. And YouTube with COVID, YouTube has opened the world up. And there are amazing teachers. There are great communicators out there that teach the Word of God and begin to feed yourself. Right now as a church, we bought a license to Right Now Media that has some of the best teachers in the nation on it, teaching on different topics. And we can help get you a link to it. You can go through and do studies and discipleship. It's just a brilliant opportunity. We'd love to connect with you to help do that. Financial peace classes available to us to help people navigate and make real change that works out our lives in a different way. And so the more I hear of what God says about stuff, the better prepared I am in my life to handle it. And so there is nothing that can substitute our personal time with Christ. Hanging around spiritual people is great, but that doesn't make you spiritual. We need to be in His presence. We need to be in a Bible teaching church. We need to be in Sunday schools or small groups where discipleship is happening so that we grow and we renew our mind for deeper roots, and deeper roots are what sustain our lives. All right. And so next week, we're going to go a little further in this, and we're going to look at the building blocks of walking in the Spirit. What does that look like, and how can I apply that to my life in a daily way? And church, I'm telling you, it makes a difference. Walk in the Spirit. First Assembly, I love you and I bless you, and I pray that you have a great day. And I want to encourage you this week, make sure you tell somebody about Jesus. God bless.